All right. Hello and welcome everybody. This is going to be my build diary for my Shock Smite Necromancer Summoner build. And this is a build that I'm really excited about. It's already showing a whole lot of potential, and I just kind of want to talk about, this as like, my first update. I'm in maps now. I'm in yellow tier maps. I'm still just cranking away, clearing everything really easily. I kind of started investing into like league mechanics. Like normally when a new league starts, I just get the various like map nodes. I just beeline it straight up here, get this wheel, get that wheel, and like get one of these wheels. It just really just speeds up just the amount of maps that I get. This time I got Essence, Heist, Essence, Delirium. I'm like, man, I'm not really getting map upgrades, and it's because I'm not getting the Keurig stuff. I'm not getting the map stuff, but I'm zerging this over here just because I noticed that crafting is way more difficult this league. So getting stream of consciousness to get just more just things happening in maps is going to be really big for me to like have a chance of like getting the gear I need to like really enable this character, really enable any character. I did not realize how much of a luxury recombinators were last league until we got a league where there's no recombinators, because crafting gear is going to be an absolute nuisance, and I'm really going to be relying on harvest. I think I have completely geared characters in the past using expedition and rog, and that's unfortunately something I might have to do again, even though I really don't want to rog craft. Like, man, like recombinators were so awesome because you could literally just like alt spam, get a stat that you want, augment it, regal it, craft it, and then just recombinate two, basically, four mod items onto each other. And like, even though it didn't always work, there's always a very reliable way to get good gear, and there's always like a reliable, measurable power gain in your gear that was consistent. Whereas I noticed with a lot of Path of Exile leaks where there's not, where it's not like old harvest, where there's not recombinators, like good gear is either just a godsend or like you need just infinite currency, and that's neither of those things that you really get in a solo self-bound scenario. But I'm going to be trying out the new harvest, and I hope that works. But I guess going back to the beginning, I was wanting to level with Smite at level 1 all the way through the a leveling process, but I quickly realized as a witch, getting no strength and no dexterity, it makes leveling as a melee build very difficult. So I ended up basically switching to Absolution as soon as I could at level 12, and then playing Absolution until around level 50, and then switching to Smite. Basically, I noticed that if you want to play like a melee witch, which sounds ridiculous, but like if you want to play a melee witch that do like a dominating blow, or maybe possibly copy this character, playing Smite and stacking that flat damage to minions to scale your damage, there's 3 nodes that you must have before you could even consider doing that playstyle, and that's coming over here and getting Spiritual Command for the attack speed, getting the minion damage applied to you, Spiritual Aid, and then coming down here and getting Resolute Technique. Through gear and through scaling precision in the future, I'll be able to drop Resolute Technique and pick up potentially Elemental Overload over here. But at least as you're leveling, those 3 things are the bare minimum, absolute bare minimum, before you can start doing melee. But basically, once I got those 3 things, Command, Aid, and then Resolute Technique, I was able to play Smite from then on out, and honestly, it's been a really awesome experience. I was wanting to just scale huge shocks and use that as a way to amplify my damage, and that's something that I think I've successfully done. I'm on tier 7 maps right now, and I'm 65 shocking all the map bosses. The scaling on the rares this league is just absolutely just stumbled by GGG. Like, I don't know what they're trying to do, making rares these ridiculous encounters while we're just absolutely melting map bosses. But I'm going to talk about more issues with the league itself after I'm done with the build. But Obviously, this is a minion build at the end of the day. I'm using Smite to give flat added damage via the aura to minions, but I'm also using that to apply shocks. In my Smite, I have a link to overcharge, lightning pin, added lightning, and that's all just to give this item as much opportunity to smite, or not to smite, but to shock as possible. And in my in-game POB, where it's not like all the best in slot gear, but it's like gear good enough to Alk and go like red tier maps, like that kind of tier gear. I'm still getting like 65% shocks on the like pinnacle bosses, not the uber forms, but the pinnacle bosses. So my shocks are covered in basically this 4-link setup with Smite. And the main minion that I'm scaling damage with is going to be zombies. I was originally wanting to scale my minion damage with Herald of Purity, but with the nerfs to Reservation, it's going to make it pretty difficult. And I think I could still do it if I were to basically path down here, pick up this aura node, that aura node. And I was wanting to do that because all these aura nodes also scale Smite, just as a skill, as well as the aura of Smite, because since Smite has the aura tag, all these aura, skills apply to Smite. And my plan was to, basically go up this way and attach my tree opening up here and pick up like some minion life and defense along the way, as well as go down here and get all the aura stuff. But that's still better for like end game when I'm have the gear to do like the uber bosses. I realized that until I get like almost all those just perfect stats on my gear, I just need the life, I need the block, mostly the life and the block. And it just makes way more sense since you're pathing, literally just beelining this path to get down a resolute technique to start the build, as well as over here provides way more life and a lot more block. It just makes sense. So I'll switch my tree eventually if I want to switch to Herald of Purity, but you need all this reservation to do Herald of Purity. I think you need this node, you need that node, and you even probably need to anoint Champion of the Cause eventually too. But since Herald of Purities is basically not going to be on the plate for a while, I'm scaling it through zombies, because zombies are free. Like, it just costs the 6-link obviously because they're my main source of damage, but yeah, they don't require reservations, so I can just focus on the other auras that are important. My 6-link, I'm amazed I got a 6-link. This is crazy. The gem sockets are completely botched. I think I want like 4 blue 1 red, or 5 blue 1 red, or 4 blue 2 red. I think might be the best, but I got a 6-link. I'm using it. The sockets are completely botched. They don't make any sense, but it's what I had. And it's what I found, and I'm thankful for it. I'm, working on Betrayal to try and slam some white sockets on this to make it a little better, but it is what it is. So, yeah, leveling with Absolution. Absolution is so good. No matter what, Absolution is going to be a breeze leveling. And surprisingly, even after switching to Smite, I just literally took an Opal Scepter, slammed added flat lightning to weapons essence on it, and then that basically took me through the rest of the leveling process. And super tanky, super defensive, melted everything. It was honestly really even leveling as Smite, it felt really good. And now that I'm in maps, it's running into a lot of the woes that a lot of new builds run into. My gear is actual garbage. Like, this is legit the gear that I walked out of Act 10 with. Lacks damage, lacks defenses, but we're leveling, and I'm, making adjustments to that along the way. So right now, like I said, I'm on tier 7 maps. So I guess, that's all the preemptive stuff. Right now, I'm on tier 7 maps. Things that I'm working on right now are going to be to get to hopefully tier 14, so I can start getting influenced items, as well as start farming the Eldritch currency. Like, you get so many stats just for slamming your gear with the Eldritch stuff. Plus the influence items, you could guarantee certain important mods through Harvest. So I guess right now my plan is to hopefully fit in Herald of Purity by dropping my Tempest Shield. I'm going down here and getting some Determination or or reservation. I'm hoping that with that, I could fit in precision as well to try and get rid of resolute technique, so I could come over here and eventually get elemental overload. But yeah, I mean, all things considering, like legit leveling gear and all, like I'm clearing all the content and it feels really good so far, and I'm excited for the future. I guess the end goal with this character is to get spell suppress capped. It should be easy, just getting this one node right here plus its Zeri steps and like modest spell suppression on these other. I think I'll need like 2 tier 1 spell suppress rolls on like the other 2 pieces to become spell suppress capped with just those 2 pieces of gear. So you know I think that's such a an important defensive layer. I'm also hoping to get capped spell block as well without getting glancing blows. But one of the main defensive layers I'm shooting for is to get a Warlord or Shaper Influence Shield and getting the 5% recover life on block. It's so much better if you could do that without glancing blows. But if I have to get glancing blows in order to fit in spell suppression, I will. Just because you know these YouTubers like Mathel and God, who are some others like Kobe, Black Kobe Bryant, Jung Rowan. They're like, oh yeah, spell suppression isn't needed. It's helpful, but isn't needed. Meanwhile, they're running down with their melding of the flesh, like 6, 6 attribute, like perfect tier gear. Like, yeah, they have like 80% flat, like physical reduction. They're like, yeah, you don't need melding of the flesh. It's not necessary. Meanwhile, they have like 90 all max res. Like, it's absolutely retarded. Like, in a solo self-found scenario, spell suppression is 100% mandatory on every single build. No questions asked. Anyway, so with that said, I kind of want to talk about the league now. The Lake of Kalandra. So Lake of Kalandra, really, really cool. It has a lot of potential, but it feels really bad now. The rewards are very, very meddling in the fact that it's very, very difficult content. You open the chest and you get like a shitty rare. Like, you get 1 like carnal armor. Wow. 1 rare carnal armor for like a really, really difficult encounter, and the scaling on it's ridiculous. Like, when I encounter the mirrors, I literally try and keep all the content as close to the portal as possible, just because like you don't get any better rewards for venturing out, and the scaling as you get further and further away is just absurd. The longest I'll go is 5 tiles out, 'cause I think you need to go at least 5 tiles to get the guaranteed reflection, Kalandra reflection thing for the special mirrored selection or whatever. But beyond that, the scaling is really, really tough. I don't mind the scaling. Like, I want hard content if there's like rewards to outweigh that. But like, the rewards don't scale. Only the monsters do, and the experience feels like it doesn't scale either. So it's just not worth doing the hard content at all. But even beyond that, even the rewards in just the encounters in general just suck. Like, I would much rather just do heist. Like, heist is way, 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 way more rewarding, and I think the Lake of Kalandra mechanic needs to be as rewarding as heist or better for people to even do it. And then I guess my only other thought thus far is the Arc Nemesis doesn't make any sense. I don't know what their fetish is about making rares like these really like difficult dynamic encounters. In Path of Exile, the way scaling has inflated, like, obviously and what I mean by this, like, this inflated scaling is that back in the day, and I'm gonna use this like analogy, right? Back in the day, back in like closed beta, or maybe just after the release of Path of Exile, 40,000 DPS was like jaw dropping, like inexplicable jaw dropping, like Omega DPS, like all best in slot gear, Rainbow Stride, Bringer of Rain, 300 physical DPS dual wielding weapons, 40k DPS. That was the end game then. The end game. And obviously the floor, the ceiling being, 40k, 50k DPS. The floor being, 0, right? And we've gone through a long span of time in Path of Exile where then all of a sudden, the Sacrifice of the Vol expansion came out. The broken banana toss was a huge thing. Cast on crit, spectral throw. And all of a sudden, people started achieving 1 million DPS. 1 million DPS. Whoa, that's crazy, dude. 1 million. And that's just the nature of scaling, nature of power scaling, or power. Oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Not power gains, but power creep and all that. Well, I guess to finish the analogy, like I said, back closed beta, right at release, 40,000 DPS was the top end, right? And now we have builds that do like a billion DPS. I'm not even kidding. That might be exaggerated, but some builds literally do 300 million DPS. I know hypothetically some builds can do a billion DPS for short bursts of time in certain scenarios, right? So how do you balance a game when the game was built around the ceiling being 40,000 DPS, the floor being 0, and now all of a sudden the ceiling is a billion DPS and the floor is still 0? Where do you put the balance marker on the scaling of monsters, of encounters and everything? There's so much variance that if you shoot it too much past the halfway point, if you'll only be able to play 5 builds with literal best in slot gear, completely unobtainable, but you have to do that to make the game feel good for the power gamers. But then on the flip side, you bring it to 1/8 the way up, all of a sudden anyone who has been playing Path of Exile for more 4 years will just melt all the content, and it'll only be challenging for the new players of Path of Exile who've only been playing for 2 months. That really makes me excited for Path of Exile 2, where I hope they just completely squish the scaling again, so they can just make the game feel better and more balanced in that context. Because I think right now, the Arc Nemesis encounters alone feel fine for the most part. But with them boosting Arc Nemesis with the application of Essence on them, you could sit there attacking one of these rares for 4 minutes, and then all of a sudden if they have Rejuvenate, you just can't kill them. The scaling on the rares with Arc Nemesis is kind of unfun. It makes me want to spec out of Essence for the first time since the Atlas tree came out, which is pretty disappointing. And I just don't understand what their fetish is. Like I said, literal fetish with making rares these super difficult dynamic encounters. I don't want the boss fight to be 3 random rares I run into during a map, and then and GGG made this huge deal about, their loot's so much better. The loot's no different. The loot's still complete dog crap from rares, and they're not worth killing. And juxtaposes that we're face tanking, melting bosses, and they drop maps. They could drop, they used to drop faded unique items, but they have, it's exciting to kill a map boss because there's a loot explosion. It feels good. I just want them to apply this whole I'll make it more difficult and more rewarding to the map bosses, because at least it's a map boss. It makes sense. It just feels weird having Arc Nemesis rares, and specifically Essence Arc Nemesis rares being the real most difficult encounters in the game. It makes no sense. But yeah, so new Arc Nemesis blundered. It's crap. Don't know why they changed it. Mirror or Lake of Kalandra, really cool. Hypothetically, the execution is crap. The rewards are horrible. The scaling is absolutely absurd. So there is hope, but they're gonna have to make a lot of adjustments to make it feel good and have it actually be worth doing. And I guess one more note before I stop the video and finish, fun, exciting, my first build diary is that leveling, engaging in the Mirror of Kalandra content while leveling also doesn't feel really good. Some league mechanics I want to highlight for feeling really good while leveling would be like expedition. Like you complete an expedition encounter, you pick up your specialized specific currency, and you immediately just talk to the person. You can like gamble it away in whatever way you see fit, whether it's ROG or any of them. The rewards were really good, gave a lot of experience. It was just worth doing. It was fun. It was worth doing along the way. During leveling, one thing I will say is that for the most part, it was all crap, not worth doing, except if you got essences. Having access to so many essences through the Lake of Kalandra content was such a boon for leveling. It made gearing really, really smooth the entire way up, and honestly, almost leads me to want to like level up like a physical melee build, because having access to essences is almost mandatory for leveling up a melee physical build, just because like for the most part it's so hard to upgrade your weapons, and your entire character is based around your weapon. So yeah, essences is mandatory, and that's the one saving grace that I would give the Lake of Kalandra content while leveling, is that the essences for leveling fantastic. But unfortunately, here for the end game, where you have so many rewards coming from so many different places, it just doesn't make any sense to actually step into the portals, at least until they buff things. So, yep. This has been my first build diary ever. I'm very excited. I'm also very excited to see where I could take this build in particular. I'm gonna continue talking about like what my struggles have been with the build, as well as just with the content in PoE here in probably a few days.